Welcome to City Hall. My name is Donna Weich, and I am the liaison to the Pulse Memorial Advisory Committee. So pleased to have all of you with us and some of the folks online. I think you're going to be really ecstatic about what you're going to see today. I know city staff has been. We've definitely got the right partners, I think, at the table. But what I really want to focus on today is that this is a 30% design meeting. And that means 30%. So we have a lot more work to do. But we're happy and have promised the community and our committee that we're going to do our best to keep you up with what's going on. So 30% today. We'll talk about steps later in the presentation. But it will be a presentation, not a back and forth, not an interactive thing like the committee's used to. But there is opportunity for public comment at the end. If you haven't gotten a card or signed up, you don't have to do it immediately. But by the end of the meeting, that's when we'll start. People have 3 minutes, and we'll hold it just like any other public meeting. So pleasure to have you all here. Little housekeeping things before we get started. Bathrooms are right behind you out those double doors. And what other housekeeping items do we have? Oh, headsets. If you need, this presentation will be in English. If you need a headset to hear it in Spanish, you can raise your hand and we will get you a headset. So, and online, I think there's an opportunity for you to hear that presentation in Spanish as well, if you need to. So let's get started. In July of 24, first Pulse Committee meeting was completed and met 2 days for 4 hours for every month until February. Had a little hurricane issue, took a couple days off, but got back at it. Ended in February. The amazing work that those group of people did was amazing. We had families represented. We had survivors represented. We had community folks at the table. And it was a consensus. Those folks had to agree to every element that they wanted in the memorial. And then we had great community leaders such as Jay Hood and Wayne Dunkelberger. And everybody will remember that tag team, and they were wonderful. And they took those ideas and they brought back what they call a DCD, which I was like, what the heck is that? It's a design control document. Am I right, gentlemen and ladies? Yes. So what you're going to see today is utterly amazing. I do want to recognize some of the committee members that are here and join us online. But if you don't mind, these folks on the front row or anybody who's in the audience that did that committee work, would you please just stand and let us recognize you? You could do that for me, just real quick. Thank you. Appreciate it. So what we're going to do today is talk a little bit about the history. We've talked about the committee. We've talked about their work. As soon as they finished in February, the city did a procurement process to find the best and the brightest here, hopefully in Central Florida. But we did find the best and the brightest right here in Central Florida. We got Gomez Construction to do the design build, and we got Borelli and Partners that'll be here doing this presentation with you today. I'm simply amazed sometimes. I was listening to the presentation, we ran through it today, and I had chills and got super emotional by the way Dan just talks about this. It's kind of like he's been there all along. He hasn't, but man, it's amazing the work that they've done. So you're going to hear from us again at 60%. Like I said, we'll talk about those things to come later in the presentation. But again, it's not a committee meeting. It's a public meeting. So you'll have 3 minutes at the end if you have a question for them. And they'll be more than happy to take your question and to give you the best answer they can at 30% design. Let's see if I've missed anything. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and put it back into the brains of the operation here. I'd like to introduce Steve Caro. He's a senior project manager with Gomez Construction, and Jorge Borelli, the president of Borelli and Partners. Take it away, gentlemen.
Well, thank you, everybody. Again, I'm Steve Coro, Gomez Construction Company. I'm the lead for the team. I'm not going to say a whole lot today because we've got George Borelli to do some of it. Peter Alvarez is our pre-construction partner. He's going to lead up the estimating side and the front end work. We're very humbled to be selected and be a part of this project. And we've selected a great partner in George Borelli. And this team, I know we've already said it, but they have put an enormous amount of effort, and we're very thankful for that, and thank you, and grateful to be a great partner, as well as the other design team members.
Thank you, Steve. It's truly an honor to be here to present the 30% design progress for the Pulse Memorial. My name is Jorge Borelli. I'm the design principal and the president of Borelli and Partners Architects. With me here today is Dan Michael Turbovich, senior architect and lead architect on the project. Dan's task is to manage and coordinate the construction documents, design documents for this memorial, and will lead in the effort. He'll have he'll be talking to you a little bit later about the specifics of the project. Also here with us today is Nico Guillen, creative director, and Amanda White, director of content and strategy with Local Projects, our memorial interpretive designer. This firm brings an extensive amount of experience in this specific type of project, and they're an excellent partner for interpreting the memorial's vision. Oh, sorry. The rest of the firms on this slide are the other other engineers and design consultants on the project team. And if those that are in the audience, would you please raise your hand and be acknowledged? There are, I think, 3 or 4 of you guys I see. Thanks for being part of it, and thanks for your contributions, all very critical people to this project. So I'm going to jump into the memorial overview, and I'm going to turn the floor over to Jay to talk to you about the original design concept as well as the design control document. I think she stole your mic.
Yeah, hi, thank you. And again, a great pleasure to be here again today. It's been several months, but I get to see my friends on the committee. And one of the things that happened, it was when the mayor said that this memorial is going to be designed by the people who are affected most by this. And so it is these committee members that really drove that design. I was fortunate enough, and Wayne Dunkelberger with Baker Barrios, to be in the position to kind of interpret what we heard to put together the DCCD, or the design control document. And what I will say, and not that everybody has said enough about the team that we've got, but when we were sitting through the interviews of the different teams, it was so clear that this was the right team, because they were the ones who came in and said that number one, they were very passionate about it, but they also were the ones who understood that this is driven by you folks, this front row and the other folks on the committee. And the respect that they showed towards that was great in the interview. And now they've backed that up, because even one of the committee members, when we were looking out here, they were like, well, is this what we saw before, or is this new? So that's all new, but that just tells you how hard they've worked to keep it in the right place, and to respect the work that y'all have done. This is just kind of the overview, and they're going to go into the detail of all the pieces. But this was the overall plan. We had a memorial in the center, this angel ellipse around the outside, and those were really the big structure things. And then there's a visitor pavilion up in the front, which is in the location of there's an existing office building on the parcel that the city picked up. We went through and showed lots of graphics about, and we talked through all those. There were some elements that were left unresolved. And what I can tell you is that this team, again, and I've been involved also just as kind of a technical advisor, because I've got the memory that kind of says, well, they really didn't like this, or they like these things. And the entire city staff has been there as well. But when it came to trying to make these decisions, I think that what you'll see is that the decisions that they've made have made the project better. There's a couple criteria that went in. Number one is, how do we make this so that it's technically feasible? How do we make it so that we can afford it? And then how can we also keep the spirit of what the committee came up with? So again, that's all I need to say, and I'll turn it back over to whoever's mic this is.
Now I got two of them. Thank you, Jay. Appreciate the kind words. So I'm going to introduce the memorial interpretive vision, and I'm going to turn the floor over to Amanda. But before I do that, I want to give you a little bit of a background on Local Projects. Local Projects is a firm that's been involved with a number of memorials that involve deeply sensitive, traumatic, and complex histories. Their experience with very similar memorials include Stonewall Monument Visitor Memorial, the 9/11 Memorial and Museum, the Legacy Museum with the Equal Justice Initiative, the Greenwood Rising, Black Wall Street History, and the National Museum of American Jewish History, just to mention a few. We believe they're eminently qualified to help craft the vision for this memorial. So with that, I'll turn it over to Amanda.
Just over there.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. I'm honored, privileged to be standing in front of you today. So we created these statements really to help us, and these really help. These really come from what we heard in the discussions that you had together, and they help guide our work, our designs, to create something that fully honors the 49 angels and remembers them with love. And we ensure that the 49 angels are remembered everywhere and in every step that people that you will take throughout the memorial. Our design is also a reminder of the love and compassion that you, the community and the city, showed, and the joy that the 49 angels knew. Give it a sec for them to read. Most importantly, it is also a place for you, a place that will be here whenever you need it, a place of peace and for your healing.
Thank you, Amanda, for sharing the framework for the Pulse Memorial's interpretive vision. So, at this point in the presentation, we're going to start the overview of the 30% progress design. And as Donna mentioned, please remember this is a 30% package. We have 70% more of this project to complete. These are very early conceptual images and renderings. Many of the materials and some of the elements have not yet been solidified and are still in progress and design. So just keep that in mind as you're looking at these images. So I'm going to jump in by by orienting you to where the memorial currently is located. It's currently located west of Orange Avenue, bounded by Cayley Street generally to the north, and Esther Street generally to the south. So in this image, I'll give you I'll highlight some of the images, some of the elements of the memorial. As you can see in the upper northwest left corner is the visitor pavilion, which you'd enter off of Cayley. And then south of that, just below it, is the private gathering space. The large ellipse, which pretty much covers the entire site, is in the foreground. And then in the center of this image is the Memorial Plaza, which Dan and Nico will go into much more detail in a second. And then on the corner of Orange and Esther is what we call the Prism Plaza. So that is the memorial in its current location. I'm going to turn the floor over to Dan and Nico both to talk about, walk you through these spaces and give you the design intent, not only for design, but also for the interpretive intent on this project, as well as our ideas on how we can preserve the memory and the essence of the original Pulse nightclub building. Dan?
Yep, thank you. This is the view from Cayley Street looking onto the visitor pavilion. The The committee wanted to make sure that we had a very public face to the memorial from this street, and wanted to make sure that it had a daytime and a nighttime presence for the memorial itself. In the background to the left, you also see the beginnings of the Angel Ellipse, which is the memorial proper. But we wanted to make sure that you were able to engage actively and civically this important facility. All right. The overall program for this facility is pretty straightforward. The first concept is that the original building that exists there now will be removed. And there's several reasons for it beyond the occupational nature of the building, the age, the condition of it. But the primary purpose for the removal was to make sure that we could tailor a facility specifically for this memorial. And there will be several elements that will attribute that. One of the most important is the notion of sustainability and environmental appropriateness. And so what we're looking at is the city's objective to actually have a LEED certified facility for this particular facility, for this visitor pavilion. Overall, the general program is pretty straightforward. It's a 3,500 square foot facility. Approximately half of that volume will actually be for exhibits for the memorial itself, as well as gathering spaces for it. The rest is amenity spaces for support, restrooms, administration functions, and utilities that we need for operational nature for the project. One of the driving concepts, though, is this engagement between exterior space and interior space. And you'll see the large windows for transparency and views. This is particularly important for the evenings when the facilities actually close. What we wanted to make sure was that the Visitors Pavilion, you were able to visit and take on and view much of the exhibit space in its totality from the exterior. Even despite operational hours for the building. The other component is the interior component. We also want to make sure that there was a relationship while you're inside the exhibit space to be able to have views and a commanding nature of the memorial itself, both for visual relief as well as emotional and psychological release as you go through this process. Because what we know is the act of remembering is a very active component. It's not a passive assignment. And so we needed to have these moments of reprieve. But I don't want to steal Nico's thunder. I love it. So he'll tell you a little bit more about the exhibit and some of the interpretive nature that we're going through and looking at for Discover.
So for the experiences themselves within, first it's worth mentioning that this is the only indoor component for the entire site. So it's really important for us. Dan mentioned that this was a gathering space as much as a storytelling space. So we really want to make sure that whatever design we implement within that space gives you ample room to actually congregate, gather. It's a place for you, really. It's a place for that purpose as much as it is a process for giving context to the events that took place almost 10 years ago now. So it's a place to gather. It's a place of reflection on the lives of the 49 angels. It's a place, almost most importantly, to really leverage the story of compassion and love that emerged out of that tragedy, which is really unique. As George mentioned, we've been dealing with a lot of these projects along the way in all parts of this nation and the world, actually. And this is unique. The response here in Orlando was unique, and we really want to honor that, leverage it, and really making it be the fore of a lot of what we do. And lastly, I think it's also very important, the meandering through the healing process after such a tragedy is varied for a lot of people. So I think it's important that there are some tangible portions of the original Pulse nightclub that will be featured in this space. So a lot is being preserved, and some of these components will be installed here. So those are the very beginnings of the thinking within. We don't have any interior views yet. I think those will be part of the next milestones of design, 60 and further. But that's really the original thinking that's behind this space at this juncture.
This is the south view from Esther Street. It is probably the most prominent pedestrian entry point for the memorial looking north. What you're seeing here is the southern element of the angel ellipse. It's a metal canopy structure, shade canopy, and walkway that surrounds the memorial plaza itself that you see in the background there, as well as the survivors' common just off to the left. One of the elements that we wanted to actually bring up is that we're utilizing the notion of a gradient colors of the rainbow as it actually transcends the entire arc length of the memorial itself. So you'll notice the color gradient changing throughout the entire process of that ellipse processional area. The other is the notion as each colonnade is then going to be represented by a tribute to each individual angel on each face. Now, this is going to be a little bit different than what you've seen previously, but then in between that space, we also have an area for seating, elliptical seating, and it's enlarged from the original DCD control documents. And the issue on that was multifaceted. The first one was that we wanted to provide a sense of private space, an area where you can gather and commune directly with an individual angel directly without it feeling cloistered or closeted in. It was just too close. It just way too intimate. And it didn't have the openness and the air and the visualization that we wanted for the space. The other was the lack of group seating. We know that it's not going to be necessarily viewed or visited by a single individual. It may be groups, and we want to provide that opportunity around a specific tribute on an angel specifically. And this is an area in which we are identifying and paying honor to the individual angel specifically here. But we also wanted to make sure that we had this ability to have that flow and the sight lines and the views and the processional component associated with this ellipse as it encompasses the memorial plaza itself. Nico, you want to talk about the specifics on the interpretive design?
Absolutely. You can see here the sort of the manifestation of how we think the angels will be memorialized. So the name was actually a big debate when we first entered the project a few months ago. If you remember from the initial documentation that was done a few years prior, there were still question marks. Do the names are names featured here? Are the names featured by the water wall, or should there be in both locations? And it became really clear after a few discussions with many groups that they needed to be in both locations for serving the purpose of collective memory by the water wall, which we'll get into in later slides. And here, as Dan mentioned, having this sense of real personal, real specificity to each of the angels at that particular location. It also became really clear to us that this event took place on Latin night, which disproportionately impacted sort of angels of Latin American origin. And so this notion of maybe potentially displaying a flag alongside their name here became also one of the decisions that we collectively made during that stage, this early phase of work. It's also an invitation to slow down. We really want this to be a place where you can spend time, you can really spend the emotional energy you need with your loved ones, with your family, with your friends. And lastly, you notice the sort of the perforated pattern on the pillar itself right now. It's really derived from the existing design. There's a low fence currently on the site where a lot of mementos, a lot of flowers, a lot of personal items are being attached with names and photographs. And so we did not want this to feel sterile. We want to invite the same process. We want to make sure that people feel comfortable making these spaces their own as this site opens and starts a life of its own.
Yep. I'd like to add just another component to this. One of the challenges we faced was how do we bring a qualitative experience and a material quality to this particular site and still remain the triad of project success, bringing a project in on time, on budget that meets client success. So in part by reducing the number of specific tribute columns in half so that it's a individual angel is on either side of it, it actually allows us to actually provide more budgetary resources to the entire memorial itself and be more appropriate in our application for that, as well as increasing the qualitative experience for the visitor, as well as the family members that would come to visit this facility. What we're looking at here is the entry to the private gathering area. This area is directly outside of the ellipse, and there's an importance and there's a symbolic factor to that. But this is an area that we wanted to have private gathering in a quiet, solemn, peaceful area away from the hustle and bustle of a normal memorial, and it was more private in nature, but it was large enough to accommodate larger groups. What we're showing here is the overall shape of the facility. What we wanted to do here was we're trying to actually bathe the visitor in colored light, a kaleidoscope of life, and celebrate that in an ethereal way. We also wanted to make sure that there was an ample seating around so that individuals could actually sit in either together in solitary situations or communally. The other is what you'll notice in between, just on the back, between the glazing and the seats themselves. This is particularly important to us. This is the location in which we're going to have capsules that are going to be assigned to each of the angels. And so in a very literal, symbolic way, you will be symbolically be able to come back and visit your angel and be surrounded by them. The shape of this area is meant to actually encompass and to hold. So in this way, the angels you're visiting are holding you. This is an evening shot. We also wanted to make sure that this is a place that you would want to come to visit and to feel safe and secure and still have that same emotional impact and resonance that you did during the day. And so this is a rendering of the facility as we're currently designing it. This image is more than a rendering. I spoke earlier that memorials have the ability to heal. This is an active engagement. You are sitting amongst your loved ones, with those that were taken from you, and you're reflecting back into the memorial proper, the survivor's common. This tragedy took more than lives. It harmed people who survived. Deeply, deeply affected their lives. We wanted the opportunity for people to commune, to sit, to reflect with those that they lost, those that were there, and to contemplate. And in some measure, heal, forgive, and to move on. Because life will move on. But I believe those of our past seek to be remembered. Sorry.
That's quite all right.
Pulse nightclub is not an abstraction for us. It was a real place for many of us. A place we visited, we have memories, and we're tied to. This area here is the survivor's common, and in the distance we have the survivor's wall, and it's specifically located just outside the perimeter of the memorial proper itself. And that's very intentional, but it's inside the boundaries of the angel ellipse. because we know that the survivors were part of that tragedy as well. And we wanted to make sure that position-wise, the spatial relationship between that, there was a strong relationship with it. Just to the right behind that little tree is the memorial obelisk. I'll speak to that a little bit later. And the two large trees there are existing trees that are remaining that we're incorporating into the landscape and the memorial itself. In the distance is the survivors tree. And George will talk about that just in a second, but it stands adjacent to the visitor plaza and just to the outside, and would be viewed both within the area of the visitors plaza as well as the memorial pavilion itself.
Thank you, Dan.
Oops, sorry.
So this area represents the Survivors Common, and it's a green space that will feature a specimen survivors tree. So we want to consider a tree that not only is visually striking, but deeply symbolic. So we're considering the olive tree as this particular survivor's tree. And olive trees throughout history and culturally have represented many symbolic images. Some of them are peace and reconciliation. The symbol of the olive tree olive branch has always been a symbol of peace and truce. It also represents endurance and resilience. Olive trees can live for centuries, even in very harsh conditions. They represent perseverance and renewal. And we believe that this is a significant nod to the memorial and deeply connected based on the symbology of this tree. Dan?
Yep. Before we go further and elaborate on the actual constituent parts of the memorial itself, we want to recognize what you're not seeing here is the existing facility. And we know that the design control documents did note that it was going to be removed. The challenge here is a deeply profound one. We have a connection with this place. People, experiences, memories, all are emotionally and psychologically tied to the physical nature of this facility, and we're going to remove it. And so our challenge is, how do we create something new that encompasses that is able to transform from what was to what will be, and honor your memory and your emotional connection to the space. Now, I'm going to go through just the quick elements of what was done, and then I'm going to add a little bit more to it. The primary component of the Memorial Plaza is the outline of the Pulse building itself. You see it banded with the colored banding or rainbow banding, as well as the seating that's placed all along the perimeter of the plaza itself. At the center, which was the location of the actual dance floor, which was the center of Pulse nightclub, which was the focal point of so much life, so much celebration, so much joy. We wanted to make sure that that was identified and incorporated specifically to it. On the north end is the backdrop of the memorial wall itself, the fountain wall, where we actually collectively honor the individual angels within the perimeter of the Pulse building itself. As we move to the west, we have the site of the memorial obelisk. This is within proximity of location of the breaching wall. A terribly, terribly deep, emotional, impactful moment in time and place. And we wanted to treat that in a significant way. And then lastly, we'll talk about the ellipse, and that is the encompassing element that radiates from all of this. It radiates from the Pulse nightclub itself. And essentially, it is a memory ripple of your loved ones and of those that were lost. So the question becomes, how do we engage these elements of proximity, of design, but infuse them with this deeply human nature of connecting with place, with connecting with materiality? And so we listened to the city, we listened to the community members, we listened to each other who had experiences. And one of the drivers that we found was that we wanted to maintain that continuity. We did not want to remove it. Nobody did. But at the same time, we couldn't utilize it in this form. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove a section of the Pulse nightclub floor And we're going to actually place that directly in position of that reflecting pole. So there's a connection between the Pulse nightclub floor and that reflecting pole where you have dance, and it's represented. We're going to use the breach wall, and we're going to salvage that in its entirety and place that at the foot of the obelisk itself. And so there's a continuity between the obelisk and that place. That was the defining element between life and tragedy and horror. And we know that this is going to be a sensitive topic. Overall, we also are going to utilize the concrete material from Pulse itself throughout the entire facility, so that under the paver support that's going to be within the Memorial Pulse Plaza itself, the Memorial Plaza, we wanted to make sure that we're bringing back this notion of dance and song, and we're going to have the concrete that's from that building utilized in that particular place, as well as other constituent elements throughout the facility as well. So this idea of salvaging, reutilization, and keeping is going to stay. Ultimately, what we want to make sure that we are able to say is that you're not losing the Pulse building. The Pulse building is going to stay, and with it, your memories and connections to your loved ones will remain. We wanted to make sure that this space wasn't just silenced with music and dance, and that we still provide an idea and reference that both in the paving material as well as the reflecting pool that you'll see in here. And it was important for us to actually have that, even though we're going to be doing it in silence and solemnity. Nico.
Yeah, a lot of heavy topics, but a few sort of driving factors for us in terms of design and connecting storytelling to design in connection to everything Dan described, which is first and foremost the names, the 49 angels within the confine of the club, as it was mentioned, on that wall, sort of being really prominent. If the ellipse is the place for a really personalized memorialization, here it's the collective memory of these 49 individuals and their connection to that event, to that tragedy. We also, if you may recall from the CDC document, the heartbeat logo was positioned as a central feature at the bottom of the reflecting pool. And we moved it to that vertical surface to really maximize its visibility throughout the site and its legibility. Before, as it was positioned, as you moved around the pool, it was maybe more difficult to perceive it in the round, so to speak. So we feel like by keeping the quote and sort of flanking the logo by the English version and the Spanish version and having the names below, we have all the right components to really provide the anchor for that collective memory exercise that we're all endeavoring into. And lastly, as far as the water wall is concerned, water being a key component, we really imagine this really slow sort of wash of water going around the names and really sort of participating in that healing process. There's real power in that as well. And the water connects the water wall and a reflecting pool, and sort of really makes a connectivity between these two components. The reflecting pool itself is, that's all right. The reflecting pool itself is the outcome of several ideas in terms of this graphic rendition as it stands now. You can sort of see two ripples intersecting. And so this notion of ripple, you may have heard that word a few times in our presentation today. It's sort of the underpinnings, and it will continue to expand. It's sort of the thread that links all these design components throughout. So the ripple is there, and it's really a symbol of the movement, the dance, the joy. It's the everlasting dance, as we often described it during all our design meetings. And it's going to be vibrant, as you see it here on screen. It's a mosaic, it's durable. It will be there for times immemorial for you to come and visit. And lastly, I think there's also this notion of connectedness which the ripple represents. So it's the epicenter of the ripple. The ripple is manifested by the ellipse on the perimeter, and you can see remnants of it by the plaza on the corner of Orange and I forget the name of that South Street. Esther Street. So we feel like all these design components are starting to come together. It's not a collection of components. It's a family of components that talk to one another, and we're excited the way this is shaping up.
This view here is actually looking through the memorial itself towards the obelisk from Orange Avenue. This is the other public face for the memorial, and we wanted to note that we're aligning both the entire memorial around the centering of the actual dance floor. It's terribly important that we actually locate that and recenter elements, and particularly the obelisk itself, to be able to transition that line of sight through the event. That transitioned the tragedy into surviving, into the next phase, and then deeper into the notion of the private gathering area. This is an evening rendition, really quick, being able to kind of give a sense of what we're anticipating, some ideas of illumination and lighting, because we know it will be a tremendous opportunity for the city to have this in the evening. We know that it'll be highly visited at night, and we wanted to make sure that we're showcasing the attributes of the memorial itself with proper lighting and illumination. This is a view a little bit closer up of the obelisk itself, looking through the survivor's garden, and just to the right, the survivor's wall. And that's going to be a unique original quote that we'll end up having there. This particular image, we wanted to make sure that there was this sense of gravity associated with the memorial. Again, the act of remembrance is an active engagement. It's not a passive exercise. We recognize that there's a tremendous amount of weight and gravity with this specific space, that there's emotional connection here, there's fear, there's horror, both of the event and surviving. And we wanted to showcase that with the simplicity of its nature. And we wanted the mass to speak for itself. The last element is the Prism Plaza. This is the southwest corner of along Orange Avenue and Esther Street. What you're seeing is the banding of the hardscape, again, kind of that pulse rhythm as it echoes out from the memorial itself. You have a very stylized Pulse tower, historically referencing the original Pulse sign, as well as the Pulse logo at the top. The location for this was specific. We wanted the southwest corner specifically because it orientates itself to the solar sunrise, and that is the solar morning. And what we wanted to provide was an opportunity to view a new day and a new beginning for our city and for ourselves. Steve?
Next steps. So next week, the sign will be removed. The week after that, the building will be removed. It'll take a week or two, maybe a little more, to remove the materials from the site. May 8th, the 60% drawings are due. And at that point in time, we'll have a public hearing. We'll have to do this again. And the design will have gone the next steps. So parts of the design, as you've gone through, are at 100%, parts are at 10. That kind of gets to the math of the 30. And at that point in time, we'll be detailing a lot more and getting in the weeds on a lot more of the design elements. Approximately September 26, 2026, that's this coming September, we're to start construction. That's when Dan and team kind of throw the keys over to us, so to speak, and we start the construction process. We're anticipating a year-long construction time. And that's all. Great job to the team. Thank you very much. Outstanding job. A lot of effort went into this. I know that's been said like 6 times, but one more time.
Outstanding. Thank you. So, So just closing, I don't know about you, but I sit through these meetings all the time, and today I almost lost it. It's just like it. And things happen for a reason. So closing is a slide I forgot, but seemingly it fits here really naturally. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Pulse Memorial mission. Sanctuary, tranquility, healing, reflection, contemplation. Remember the 49 whose lives were taken in a culturally and linguistically competent manner. Educate on the impact of Pulse on the community and the world. Love, hope, and acceptance. Resilience, moving forward through adversity. Voice for those affected, survivors, first responders, all of us who worked, city staff, communities, clergy that were there from day one, and some of us till the time we retired in 2023, and suddenly we're back. Honor and celebrate the lives that were brutally taken on June 12th, 2016. And if this presentation hasn't met those mission marks, then come see me afterwards because I want to hear about it. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for all who attended on Zoom. Thanks to the committee who did the hard work, because there was passion, there was grief, and they pulled through this with an amazing outcome. Thanks to these wonderful people that are working with us. Again, thanks for the amazing city staff that continue to work every day. Thank you. Now we'll start public comment. Mic check.
Good afternoon. Is there anyone in the room that would like to speak? Please submit your form and stand at the microphone. If you can state your name, you have 3 minutes to speak and you can begin now.
I'm Christine Hanovan. I'm one of the few people who answered public feedback surveys during the Memorial Committee process. And as I commented then, I strongly disagree with the plans and the process that produced them. For nearly a decade, the city of Orlando has pretended the 49 families are too grief-stricken and the hundreds of survivors are too traumatized to be rational. They've been repeatedly re-traumatized by city officials avoiding accountability and outright lying to them. That includes during this memorial process that excluded the most vocally critical parents. The city consistently put its goals above those who disagree with that vision. They ignored the vast majority who don't agree with them. The city is exploiting the dead and repeatedly harming the living. And I understand why so many families and survivors chose no further involvement in this. The 49 who were murdered deserve a respectful, dignified, and peaceful memorial that their families control, not the city of Orlando. The Pulse Memorial shouldn't be an over-designed, attention-grabbing tourist destination and vanity project. It shouldn't repeat one Pulse's mistakes and regurgitate their plans like the angel lives. It isn't about pride, Orlando United, Orlando Strong, or any other slogan. The only names that should appear at the memorial are the people who died or survived. It should not have city commissioner names or those of any other individuals or organizations. The unpermitted nightclub was a death trap, and there's an open premise liability lawsuit against the former owners. An inspection is long overdue to document what's still possible to document. That'll be impossible if you carry out the demolition as scheduled. Families and survivors deserve justice, and you can't undo further destruction of evidence once it's over. Whether or not the court intervenes to issue an injunction, please delay the demolition. The Pulse premises have already been irreparably tampered with. The language around experiences, exhibits, and artifacts suggests that items that were removed and stored will be included and put on display. They're not artifacts. They're evidence from a crime scene, and it was not an archaeological dig. I'm especially concerned that the wood floor and outside patio tiles were on the so-called artifact list, and that you're going to use the unpermitted dance floor for the reflecting pool. Dozens of people died on those floors. Another person died on that patio, and others were trapped by the unpermitted fencings around it. All of this is absolutely abhorrent. It shows zero empathy and consideration for the survivors and victims. You're perverting their traumas and deaths for a tacky, performative rainbow spectacle. And I stand in solidarity with the Pulse families and survivors for justice and in opposition to these memorial plans.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else in the room that would like to speak? Okay, we're going to move on to Zoom speakers. Up next is Zachary Blair, followed by Joshua Hernandez Carrion. Please unmute your device.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
You all are saying the right things, but there's a big problem here, and that's erasure. For years, the mayor and city council supported the One Pulse Foundation's privatized memorial, while we fought for a public memorial park. We reported One Pulse's breach of contract. We are the reason One Pulse dissolved, and we are the reason this memorial is in the hands of the city. And now we are demanding better. Let me be clear. Our criticism is not about design opinions, unchecked emotions, or grief, as some with the city have tried to dismiss. It's about injustice and the ongoing re-victimization of Pulse survivors by this city. This design is the product of that harm. Victims' mothers should have never been excluded from being on the advisory committee, and they should have led the memorial's design, which I have questions about. Will a piece of Pulse's unpermitted fence that hindered escape be displayed as an artifact in the visitor center? Will the Coke refrigerator that blocked egress be preserved? Will the cash register the city removed from the building tell future memorial tourists that nightly cover charges violated Pulse's conditional use permit? Or will those facts be erased by this memorial and the interpretive vision that you just presented? The city is not acting on behalf of survivors, but is instead dictating what moving forward should look like, while using this memorial to shield itself from accountability. This $12.5 million memorial has become a taxpayer-funded marketing project, one that sanitizes history, exhausts survivors, and helps sustain a cover-up. And on that issue, Commissioner Sean Rose told multiple people, including myself and the media, that the office of the mayor sought to have the city's backup server wiped to conceal Pulse's permitting records. According to Rose, after the shooting, there was an effort from the top to erase records that documented the city's failures. Her ongoing silence is not just complicity, rather it is perpetuating the corruption inside the office of the mayor. Pulse survivors need courage, not empty performances and blind allegiances to a mayor with a mugshot. It is not my job to protect those in power, while they sustain civil rights violations upon survivors, denying them any resemblance of justice. It is an insult that the city put a sign up with their names on this memorial before the names of actual survivors. This project is being built on the foundation of corruption and fraud, one that gave the Pulse owners $2 million of taxpayer funds for a property with a market value worth less than half of that, helping them fund their legal defense against victims, families, and survivors who are suing them for premise liability. Throughout this process, the pattern has been clear: control the narrative, conceal the facts. A dignified public memorial park is the only ethical path forward, a green space, not this tourism spectacle that looks like a turnpike rest area stop. A design that allows the city to tell the stories of the victims and survivors should never be built, because they are liars. And a memorial without accountability is not remembrance. It's a continuation of harm. You should also know that the dance floor, like the previous speaker just said, was unpermitted. So the beauty you see in incorporating the dance floor in your design is not what we see. It's a reminder of the city's failure to enforce the law and bring Pulse into compliance.
Thank you for your time. Your time has ended. The next speaker is Joshua Hernandez Carrion. Please unmute your device. You have 3 minutes to speak. Joshua Hernandez Carrion, please unmute your device. The next speaker is Carmen Capo. If you're online, please raise your hand. One more time for Joshua Hernandez Carrion. Thank you. That's all of our speakers for tonight. Public comment has ended.
Thank you for all coming tonight. Have a very safe ride home. Any questions? Please take a look around. Take your time with those.
Donna, if you can restate that on the mic. Thank you all for joining us tonight.